48 hours. That's all a blind German Shepherd had left before the red sticker on his cage meant death. No family. No hope. But then, one photo escaped the shelter walls, and what happened next, no one saw coming. This is Cooper, 7 years old, 93 pounds of pure German Shepherd nobility, and completely, utterly alone. His world exists in shades of gray and black now. The cataracts that cloud his amber eyes having stolen the last traces of light from his vision 6 months ago. But it's not the blindness that breaks your heart when you look at him. It's the way he's given up. While every other dog in the Sacramento County Animal Shelter presses against their kennel doors, barking desperately for attention, tails wagging frantically at every passing footstep, Cooper sits motionless in the back corner of Kennel 7B. His massive frame is curled into itself, his once proud head resting heavily on paws that used to carry him confidently through the world. He listens to those footsteps, every single pair, but he no longer lifts his head when they pause at his gate, no longer bothers to hope that this time, maybe this time, someone will see past his clouded eyes to the gentle soul underneath. You can hear in the shelter the symphony of desperation. Dogs barking, whimpering, scratching at metal doors. But from Kennel 7B, silence. Complete, heartbreaking silence. Cooper has learned what too many forgotten animals learn eventually. That hope is a luxury he can no longer afford. But Cooper wasn't always like this. Cooper wasn't born in this concrete cell, forgotten and unwanted. 3 months ago, Cooper lived in a small house on Maple Street with Harold Brennan, an 84-year-old widower who saw in Cooper what everyone else has somehow missed. Harold saw a companion, a guardian, a reason to get out of bed every morning. For 6 years, they were inseparable. Harold's hands, gnarled with arthritis, would work gently through Cooper's thick coat every evening while they watched the news together. Cooper's head would rest on Harold's lap, his clouded eyes gazing up adoringly at the man who had become his entire universe. When Harold's own vision began to fail from glaucoma, Cooper became his guide. When Cooper's sight dimmed from cataracts, Harold became his voice, describing the world his loyal companion could no longer see. "The roses are blooming again, boy," Harold would whisper during their morning walks. "Mrs. Chin's orange tabby is sitting on the fence, pretending he's not interested in that cardinal." And Cooper would wag his tail, not because he could see these things, but because Harold's voice painted pictures more vivid than sight itself. They had a routine, these two old souls growing old together. Every morning at 7:30, Cooper would guide Harold to the mailbox, his shoulder pressed against Harold's leg, navigating by memory and instinct. Every evening at 6, Harold would fill Cooper's bowl with the expensive prescription food that kept his joints from aching too badly. And every night, Cooper would settle beside Harold's bed, one ear always listening, always ready to help if his human needed him. But partnerships built on love and loyalty are fragile things. They depend on beating hearts and working lungs and the cruel mathematics of time. And on a Tuesday morning in March, Harold Brennan's gentle heart simply stopped beating. The neighbors found them 3 days later. Harold, peaceful in his favorite armchair, the newspaper still folded in his lap, and Cooper, dehydrated and confused, still sitting beside that chair, still waiting for his beloved human to wake up and tell him what a good boy he was. Harold's family tried to do the right thing. They really did. But when they saw Cooper's veterinary records, his special dietary needs, the daily medications for his arthritis, the eye drops for his cataracts, the sheer scope of care this aging, disabled dog required, well, practicality won over sentiment. "We can't handle a blind dog," they told each other. "He'll be better off somewhere that specializes in special needs animals." The shelter staff at Sacramento County knew Cooper's story, and they tried everything in their power to save him. They photographed him from every angle, capturing the gentle intelligence in his clouded eyes, the regal bearing he maintained even in captivity. They wrote heartbreaking descriptions of his perfect house manners, his gentleness with children, his unwavering loyalty to those he loved. They posted his photo on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, every pet adoption website they could find. They reduced his adoption fee from $200 to $100, then to $50, then finally to donation only. They featured him in a local newspaper with the headline, "Senior Dog Seeks Quiet Home." They brought him to adoption events, where he sat patiently, his clouded eyes searching for sounds of interest that never came. And week after week, month after month, potential families would approach Kennel 7B. They would read his story, see his gentle nature, maybe even reach through the bars to stroke his graying muzzle. Some would linger, clearly touched by his quiet dignity. Children would point and say, "Mommy, what's wrong with his eyes?" And parents would kneel down and explain, "He can't see, sweetheart. He's blind." But then, inevitably, they would see the reality of what adopting Cooper would mean. The special food, the medications, the extra care, the knowledge that his time left was measured in years, not decades. And one by one, they would walk away. Sometimes with apologetic smiles, sometimes with guilty backwards glances, but they would walk away nonetheless. Cooper learned to recognize the pattern. The approaching footsteps, the pause at his kennel, the soft murmurs of consideration, then the sound of those same footsteps retreating. Each time it happened, he retreated a little further into himself. Until now, he doesn't even bother to acknowledge visitors at all. But here's what none of them knew, what Cooper himself couldn't understand. His story wasn't over. His greatest test of loyalty wasn't behind him. It was still coming. Because sometimes when everything seems hopeless, when love seems lost forever, that's exactly when love proves it's stronger than loss, stronger than time, stronger even than death itself. The question that hangs in the air, the one that will determine whether Cooper's story ends in this cold concrete kennel or transforms into something miraculous, is this: what happens when someone who has already lost everything discovers they have one last chance to prove that loyalty never dies? That test was coming sooner than anyone could imagine. Sarah Martinez had been volunteering at the Sacramento County Animal Shelter for 3 years, but she'd never formed a bond like the one she had with Cooper. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, after her shift at the insurance office, she'd drive the 15 minutes across town to spend time with the animals that nobody else seemed to want. The senior dogs, the ones with medical issues, the forgotten ones. But Cooper was different. From the moment she'd first approached his kennel 6 weeks ago, something had broken open inside her chest. Maybe it was the way he tilted his head when she spoke, those clouded eyes searching for her voice in the darkness of his world. Maybe it was how gently he took treats from her palm, his massive jaws careful not to catch even a fingertip. Or maybe it was the way he leaned into her touch when she reached through the kennel bars, as if he remembered what love felt like and was desperate not to let it slip away again. "Hey there, beautiful boy," she'd whisper every visit, and Cooper's tail would thump once against the concrete floor. Just once. But it was enough. It meant he still had hope. But hope, Sarah was learning, could be a cruel thing. As the weeks turned into months, she watched Cooper change. The gentle giant who'd once greeted her with that single tail wag began retreating deeper into the corner of his kennel. He stopped coming to the front when families approached. He stopped lifting his head when she called his name. The light behind those clouded eyes was dimming, and Sarah could feel her own heart breaking a little more each visit. "He knows," she confided to her husband one evening over dinner. "I swear he knows that nobody wants him. It's like he's given up." And then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning when Shelter Director Patricia Williams gathered the staff and volunteers for an emergency meeting. Her face was grave, her usually warm smile replaced by the hard lines of someone forced to make impossible decisions. "We're at critical capacity," she announced. "The county is transferring 43 animals from the flood-damaged facility in Stockton. They'll be here by Thursday morning, and we simply don't have the space." Sarah felt her stomach drop. She knew what this meant. They all did. We have to make room. Priority goes to the most adoptable animals. Young, healthy, without behavioral or medical issues. Everyone else. Patricia's voice caught. Everyone else has until Wednesday at closing. 48 hours to find homes. The room fell silent. Sarah's mind immediately went to Cooper, alone in Kennel 7B, unaware that his world had just shrunk to 2 days. That evening, Sarah arrived at the shelter with a heaviness in her chest she'd never felt before. The other volunteers were there too, all working frantically to get final photos of the at-risk animals, making desperate phone calls to rescue organizations, posting on every social media platform they could think of. But when Sarah reached Cooper's kennel, he wasn't at the front waiting for her. He wasn't even in his usual corner spot. He was pressed against the back wall, as far from the gate as possible, his body curled into itself like he was trying to disappear entirely. "Cooper," she called softly. "Hey, baby, it's me." He didn't move, not even an ear twitch. For a terrifying moment, Sarah wondered if he was even breathing. She sat down on the cold concrete floor outside his kennel, her back against the chain-link fence. Other volunteers rushed past, their footsteps echoing urgently through the corridor, but Sarah couldn't move. She couldn't leave him. Not now. Not when he needed her most. "I'm scared too," she whispered through the metal links. "I'm so scared, Cooper. I don't know how to save you." Hours passed. The shelter grew quiet as evening fell, but Sarah remained on that concrete floor, talking to Cooper in the darkness. She told him about Harold, about how much his first dad had loved him. She told him about all the families who would be lucky to have him, if only they could see past his clouded eyes to the gentle soul underneath. She promised him things she wasn't sure she could deliver. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, though her voice cracked with uncertainty. "Somebody's going to see how special you are. Somebody's going to choose you." But Cooper didn't move. He lay there in the darkness. This magnificent dog who had once been someone's entire world, now reduced to counting down his final hours in a concrete cell. Wednesday morning brought no applications, no phone calls, no miracle families arriving to save the day. Sarah called in sick to work and spent the entire day at the shelter, sitting beside Cooper's kennel, watching the clock on the wall tick away his remaining time. Other at-risk animals were claimed throughout the day. A senior beagle mix found a retirement home with an elderly couple. A three-legged cat charmed her way into the hearts of a young family. But Cooper's kennel remained silent, empty of visitors, empty of hope. By evening, Patricia Williams had to make her rounds. The animals who hadn't found homes would be moved to a separate area, away from the general population, away from the volunteers who'd grown to love them. It was, everyone knew, the first step toward the end. Sarah pressed her face against the chain-link fence, tears streaming freely now. Cooper finally lifted his head, those clouded eyes turning in her direction, and for just a moment, she saw a flicker of the dog he used to be. The dog who had loved Harold Brennan with every fiber of his being. The dog who still had so much love left to give, if only someone would let him. "I won't let them do this," she whispered fiercely. "I won't let you die alone. I won't let you think nobody cares." But even as she made that promise, even as Cooper's tail gave the faintest tremor of recognition, Sarah knew she was fighting a battle she might not be able to win. Time was running out, and sometimes love isn't enough to save the ones we cherish most. The clock on the wall showed 8:47 p.m., 13 hours and 13 minutes until Cooper's world would end forever. Unless something changed, unless someone stepped forward, unless a miracle was waiting in the darkness, just beyond what any of them could see. The shelter clock read 11:23 p.m. when Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone, her eyes red from crying, her heart heavy with the weight of failure. Cooper lay motionless in his kennel behind her, and she could hear the shallow rhythm of his breathing in the darkness. 13 hours. That's all they had left. One more try, she whispered to herself. Just one more try. Sarah had posted about Cooper dozens of times over the past 3 months. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Nextdoor, every rescue group forum she could find. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like their last chance to reach someone, anyone, who might see what she saw when she looked at this magnificent, broken-hearted dog. This time, though, she didn't just post his photo in a heartbreaking plea. Something told her to be more specific, more detailed. She included everything. His microchip number, his exact age, the street where Harold had lived, even the small scar on his left ear from a childhood accident that Harold had once mentioned. "Please," she typed through her tears. This is Cooper. Microchip number 982000363451782. He lived on Maple Street with Harold Brennan until 3 months ago. He's blind, he's gentle, and he's running out of time. If anyone has any connection to this dog or his past, please help us. He deserves to be loved. She hit share and watched the post disappear into the vast ocean of social media. One desperate message among millions. Then she put her phone away and settled back down on the cold concrete floor beside Cooper's kennel, resigned to spending what might be their last night together. But the internet, as it sometimes does, had other plans. Within the first hour, the post had been shared 17 times, then 50, then over 100. Comments began pouring in from strangers across California, each one sharing the post further, each one adding their own prayers and hopes for Cooper's salvation. Sarah's phone buzzed constantly with notifications, but she barely glanced at them. She'd seen this before. Viral posts about shelter animals got lots of sympathy, lots of shares, but rarely resulted in actual adoptions, especially not for senior dogs with special needs. It was 11:47 p.m. when everything changed. The notification that popped up on her screen looked like all the others at first. Just another comment on her post about Cooper. But when Sarah read the words, her entire body went cold, then hot, then cold again. Oh my God, that's my dog. That's my Cooper. I've been looking for him for 3 months. Sarah stared at the screen, certain she was hallucinating from exhaustion and stress. She read the comment again. Then again, the profile belonged to someone named Maria Santos, and her location showed Sacramento, California. With trembling fingers, Sarah clicked on Maria's profile. What she saw there made her gasp out loud, the sound echoing through the quiet shelter corridor. Photos, dozens of them. Cooper as a younger dog, his coat glossy and full, his eyes bright and clear. Cooper lying beside an elderly man in a hospital bed. Cooper wearing a red bandana at what looked like a Christmas gathering. And most recent of all, posted just 2 weeks ago, a missing dog poster with Cooper's photo and the desperate words, "Lost." Cooper, German Shepherd, 7 years old, blind. Last seen March 15th, family dog. Reward. Please help bring him home. Sarah's hands shook so violently she could barely type a response. Are you sure? Can you prove he's yours? The reply came within seconds. His microchip number is 982000363451782. He has a small scar on his left ear from when he was a puppy and tried to squeeze under my dad's fence. He knows the command in Quintra for find, and when he's happy, he makes this little whining sound that's almost like singing. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She looked back at Cooper, still motionless in his kennel, unaware that his entire world was about to change again. Her phone rang, an unknown number, but somehow Sarah knew exactly who it would be. "Hello," she answered, her voice barely a whisper. Is this about Cooper, the German Shepherd at the shelter?" The woman's voice was thick with tears, trembling with hope and fear in equal measure. "Yes," Sarah managed. "Yes, this is about Cooper. Oh God, oh thank God. I'm Maria Santos. Cooper. Cooper is my father's dog. Was my father's dog. My dad passed away 3 months ago, and I've been searching for Cooper ever since. The family who was supposed to take care of him, they told me he'd been handled, but they never told me he'd ended up in a shelter. I've been posting flyers, calling every rescue group, checking every lost dog website. I never stopped looking for him." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. "Maria, I need to tell you something. Cooper has been here for 3 months, and he's scheduled for. We only have until tomorrow morning." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for what felt like eternity. When Maria spoke again, her voice was fierce with determination. "I'm coming. Right now. Tonight. Don't let anything happen to him. Please. That dog loved my father more than life itself, and my father loved him the same way. Cooper isn't just a pet. He's family. He's the last piece of my dad I've left in this world." Sarah looked back at Cooper, still curled against the far wall of his kennel, and for the first time in months, she smiled through her tears. "Cooper," she called softly. "Cooper, baby, guess what? Someone's been looking for you. Someone's been searching for you this whole time." And maybe it was her imagination, maybe it was wishful thinking, but she could swear she saw his ear twitch. Just once, like some part of him, some deep instinct, knew that his long nightmare was finally about to end. The truth was almost too beautiful to believe. While Cooper had been sitting in Kennel 7B, convinced he was unwanted and forgotten, someone who loved him had been moving heaven and earth to find him. The bond between them hadn't been broken by death or time or distance. It had only been waiting, patient and unshakable, for the moment when love would finally triumph over loss. At 12:47 a.m., the automatic doors of the Sacramento County Animal Shelter slid open, and Maria Santos stepped into the fluorescent-lit lobby with tears already streaming down her face. She'd driven through the night from her home in Stockton, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had gone white, her heart hammering with a mixture of hope and terror that she might be too late. Sarah was waiting for her, clutching a ring of keys, her own eyes red and swollen from crying. The two women had never met before this moment, but when they saw each other, they embraced like old friends, like conspirators in a miracle. "He's okay," Sarah whispered into Maria's shoulder. "He's okay, and he's yours." The walk to Kennel 7B felt like it took forever. Their footsteps echoed through the empty corridors, past dozens of sleeping animals, past the ghosts of all the stories these walls had witnessed. But tonight, this story was different. Tonight, love was winning. "Maria," Sarah said softly as they approached Cooper's kennel, "I need to prepare you. He's been through so much. He's not the same dog you remember. The grief, the confusion, being here, it's changed him." Maria nodded, but nothing could have prepared her for what she saw when Sarah's flashlight illuminated Kennel 7B. There, pressed against the back wall like he was trying to disappear entirely, was Cooper. But this wasn't the Cooper from her memories. This wasn't the proud, confident dog who had walked alongside her father every morning. This was a broken shadow of that animal, his magnificent coat dull and patchy from stress, his once powerful frame now gaunt and fragile. For a moment, Maria couldn't breathe. The sight of him, so diminished, so defeated, hit her like a physical blow. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "That dog has more dignity in his little toe than most people have in their whole bodies." But where was that dignity now? Then she did something that changed everything. She spoke a single word, one word in Spanish, the same word her father had used every morning for 6 years. "Encuentrame." Find me. The transformation was instantaneous and miraculous. Cooper's head snapped up, his clouded eyes searching frantically in the direction of her voice. His ears, which had been flat against his skull for weeks, suddenly pricked forward. And then, for the first time since the day Harold Brennan died, Cooper rose to his feet. "Encuentrame, mi amor," Maria repeated, her voice breaking on every syllable. Cooper began to move, slowly at first, then faster, his paws clicking against the concrete as he navigated purely by sound and scent and the memory of love. He pressed himself against the kennel door, his tail not just wagging but practically vibrating with joy, and he made a sound that Sarah had never heard before. A high, keening whine that was part sob, part song, part prayer gratitude. Sarah fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking so badly she could barely fit the right one into the lock. When the kennel door finally swung open, Cooper didn't hesitate. He launched himself into Maria's arms with a force that knocked them both backward. But Maria held on, her arms wrapping around his neck, her face buried in his fur as they both trembled with the intensity of their reunion. "I looked for you," Maria whispered fiercely into his ear. "Every single day, I looked for you. I never stopped. I would never stop." Cooper pressed his face against her cheek, and that's when Sarah realized he was crying. Actual tears were streaming from those clouded eyes, soaking into Maria's hair as they held each other like survivors of the same shipwreck. But the most extraordinary thing was watching Cooper transform in real time. Within minutes of Maria's arrival, He was standing taller, his tail held high, that inherent dignity returning to his bearing like water filling a dry riverbed. He wasn't just a broken shelter dog anymore. He was Cooper Santos Brennan, beloved son, faithful guardian, living memorial to a love that death itself couldn't diminish. Sarah watched them with wonder, understanding for the first time that what she'd witnessed wasn't just a pet rescue. It was a resurrection. Cooper hadn't just been saved from euthanization. He'd been brought back from a kind of living death, restored to himself by the simple act of being recognized, being claimed, being loved. The night before my father died, Maria said, still holding Cooper close, he made me promise him something. He said, "When I'm gone, you find my boy. You make sure he knows he's still loved." I thought I'd failed him. I thought I'd broken the most important promise I ever made. She pulled back to look into Cooper's face, her hands gently cradling his graying muzzle. "But I didn't fail, did I, baby? You were just waiting for me to find you." As they prepared to leave the shelter, Sarah watched Maria guide Cooper toward the exit, his shoulder pressed trustingly against her leg, his steps sure and confident despite his blindness. At the doorway, Cooper paused and turned back toward Kennel 7B, as if saying goodbye to the place that had nearly broken him. Then he turned toward the doors that led to freedom, to family, to the rest of his life. In that moment, Sarah understood something profound about the nature of love and loyalty. Cooper's devotion to Harold hadn't ended with death. It had simply transferred, undiminished, to the next member of his family. Love like that doesn't die. It doesn't fade. It just waits, patient and enduring, for its moment to bloom again. Sometimes the greatest miracles aren't about divine intervention or impossible coincidences. Sometimes they're about people who refuse to give up, who keep searching when everyone else has moved on, who believe that love is stronger than loss. Maria had looked for Cooper for 3 months, posting flyers, checking websites, calling shelters, never accepting that he was truly gone. And Cooper, in his own way, had been waiting for her too, surviving each day, holding on to hope when everything around him screamed hopelessness, trusting that somewhere, someone still remembered his name. That night, as Cooper settled into the passenger seat of Maria's car, his head resting peacefully on her lap for the first time in months, he was no longer a sheltered dog facing death. He was a family member coming home. The circle, broken by grief, was finally complete again. Love had found its way back to love. And that perhaps is the only miracle any of us ever really need. Every life matters. Every senior dog, every special needs animal, every pet sitting in a shelter kennel has a story worth saving. Cooper's story reminds us that heroes aren't just the people who save. They're also the people who never stop looking. Would you be the hero for a pet in need? If Cooper's miracle touched your heart, share this story. Subscribe for more incredible rescue stories that prove love always finds a way. Because every dog deserves their miracle ending.